It's the one place in Las Vegas where water conservation, historical preservation, innovative exhibits, and room to play make this a place to call home for every age. And there are many more stories at the Springs Preserve where all that matters is what's elemental. The joyful performances of Cirque du Soleil have entertained millions of people for decades now, but it's the company's One Drop Foundation that's taking a creative approach to raising awareness about worldwide water issues both here and abroad.
One Drop was started by Cirque du Soleil founder Guy Laliberté back in 2007. Guy really wanted to do something different, so he started doing some research and he realized that water really encompasses everything. It's obviously truly the source of life, but also no community can thrive without access to safe water.
Like the entire Cirque venture, One Drop is a multinational endeavor with a distinctive Las Vegas connection.
We actually have an event here in Las Vegas that's called Walk for Water, which we do in October. And it's really just to pay tribute to the women and kids, which are usually girls, that walk for hours and hours for water, very often unsafe water on top of that.
With easy access to clean, steady supplies in one readily available place, women can be freed from the endless burden of bearing water.
You know, the amount of people that you can actually change and change their lives forever, that's amazing.
Since water is a universally important human resource, they also decided that change should be local as well as global.
And what better place to do that in Las Vegas? I mean, we understand that, you know, there is a water crisis and we understand that we need to make some changes. So we did some research and we realized that the Springs Preserve has some wonderful programs in place already. So we decided to partner with the Springs Preserve.
The Springs Preserve is the home of the original water supply for Las Vegas. And now, 100 and some years later, not only Las Vegas, but all places around the U.S. and much of throughout the world, people are struggling to make sure that they have a reliable water source moving into the future.
The Preserve takes its water stewardship seriously with activities and educational opportunities, but also with an operational reservoir and fully functioning pump station that will open to the public in 2017 as the Waterworks exhibit.
The Waterworks exhibit is actually being made possible with our partnership with the One Drop Foundation and a contribution from the Royal Bank of Canada's Blue Water Project. So people that visit the Springs Preserve will be able to come and discover what it does take to get water to their tap, locating the water resources, actually treating the water. Technology is emerging and changing on a daily basis. What we do for drought conservation here, what we need to be looking for in the future, and we can pair that with the fact that we have more than 100 years of history of water delivery to Las Vegas currently on the site of the Springs Preserve.
We think the Waterworks exhibit will become a great place in Las Vegas for residents and world travelers alike because of its impressive technology and memorable lessons.
We have an international city. It's a destination for people from around the world to be able to really have a showcase for them to talk about water conservation and the struggles that people have in getting water every day.
And the shared vision of One Drop and the Springs Preserve when it comes to water here in Las Vegas or in the smallest village is worth repeating because it's working. On March 18th, join the cast and crew of Cirque du Soleil as they share the stage with world-renowned performers during the 4th annual One Night for One Drop charity event in support of the One Drop Foundation. Guests will enjoy an exclusive cocktail reception before the incredible show, as well as an unforgettable post-show experience, all for the benefit of safe water projects around the world, as well as youth education and water conservation projects right here in Southern Nevada. For more information, visit onenight.onedrop.org. The long-awaited return of one of the Mojave's iconic and complicated creatures to the preserve is complete now that a group of desert tortoises are finally home and a new habitat for visitors to seek out and learn about this true desert survivor.
The process of getting tortoises introduced here at the Springs Preserve involves many components, one of which is regulatory. We want to make sure we have tortoises that we have permits for. In this case, these are tortoises that were given to us by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that were previously captive.
The freedom they found here also comes with a lot of responsibility.
We're trying to restore an ecosystem, and an integral part, a keystone species, if you will, is a species that's integral to the ecosystem, that it needs to function properly. So by putting tortoises out here, it provides homes to a host of other animals, and it's what we call a thermal refuge, a place where they can go in the heat of the summer to get away from the sun.
Today, they'll be just as well fed and watered as on the original site of the springs.
They're herbivores. They're going to eat a lot of vegetation, and they have to have enough vegetation, annuals, perennial plants, to sustain them through the entire year. So you don't want to put too many and then they're, competing for food. You want to put them in basically a lush habitat. And this particular habitat has some irrigation for some of the plants along the trail, so the tortoises will have a readily accessible source of water, so that'll be beneficial to them.
With all the natural and built-in benefits of this habitat, we've also wired them for tracking purposes to monitor their health and travel patterns.
The main crux of our research is going to be restricted primarily to making sure they're healthy and that they're contributing to the ecosystem. So the transmitters will be on for 2 years. We'll get an idea of their distribution and whatnot.
Even this exhaustively studied species is still revealing some remarkable secrets for desert living.
One of the main discoveries recently for turtles and tortoises is that there's vocalizations. So for instance, we have a certain hearing range, and tortoises happen to be below that hearing range, sort of like the subsonic vocalizations in elephants. So a very similar thing, except it's more clicks and chirps and that kind of thing.
They're not the most sociable of animals, though, and they like their room to roam, which is why we've strictly limited their numbers.
We don't want people, bringing us their pet tortoises that they're, if they're moving out of state or for whatever reason, or they had babies. We don't accept any animals of any kind.
Now that they're burrowing in for their first winter of hibernating here, it's unlikely you'll see them. But it's worth the walk for all the lessons this habitat has to offer, and the possibility of coming across one on warmer days and as the seasons change.
There are several trails here at the Springs Preserve, and one of them goes right through the 15-acre habitat. And it is possible, typically spring and fall would be the best time to see tortoises, just out and foraging. It's not a sure thing, just like the fox or the other species out on the site. You're not guaranteed to see one, but they are there.
While the golden age of the railroad in Las Vegas is long gone, so many of its physical remnants are being given an important new place in our history, along a lane of original cottages that are coming to life with moving memories of the city's beginnings.
So Las Vegas is a railroad town, with the railroad coming here in 1905, the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad. And Las Vegas was important to them for the water source, but it was also important because it was the main division point between Salt Lake City and Los Angeles. And so it was important to have a functioning town that could support workers that were going to be working in these shops. So the railroad decided they were going to build houses, cottages. They built 64 of them, and these were houses that were going to be mainly for shop workers, sort of mid-level employees, conductors, engineers, those types of people.
And over the ensuing decades of enormous change in Las Vegas, the stock of cottages almost completely disappeared, or were so radically renovated they became unrecognizable, with the impressive exception of those the preserve was able to save.
So everything that we have done with the cottages in restoration now was based off these original blueprints, and really exciting to see what you would consider to be very typical sort of color schemes for that time period. Very dark greens, light blues, yellow trim on the houses, green olive trim on the houses. So it's all very exciting to see that. So to have those original sort of colors on these houses provides a good picture of what this cohesive neighborhood would have looked like originally.
Although even the most faithful attention to detail couldn't restore truly unique memories like the first-hand accounts of Bradford Overfield, who can actually call one of these exhibits his home, and can remember the foster mother named Maudie who raised him there.
That's Monty's house. She touched a lot of lives. We were very poor. We lived very plain. As you can see in some of these photos, the floors are just like they are. But as I told you in the house, she actually waxed those floors on her hands and knees with a can of wax, and she'd wax it and buff it. They were gorgeous. And I just jump on my motorcycle and just cruise from Vegas High back to First Street and sit and think about old times. But then one day somebody told me, they're tearing those homes down over there. That stuff's all going away. And I'm a funny person. I wouldn't go back over there. Because if I go there and it's gone, then it's real. If I don't see it gone, it might still be there. So, yeah, now I know it's got a home. So.
To get first-hand accounts of people who actually lived lives in these houses, in these structures, is very important, because sometimes we forget that families lived there for long term. So to be able to bring these personal stories into these houses that have been here in Las Vegas for over 100 years is very, very important.
When it's finished, it will be one more avenue for guests to gather and remember the many origin stories that are so common to the preserve. Many of our traveling exhibits have taken guests to far-flung places and times, from the rainforests of the world to the Renaissance era and a Jurassic landscape teeming with dinosaurs. But now we're going to new depths with Odyssey's Shipwreck exhibit, which also reaches the heights of excitement at the discovery of actual sunken treasure.
Odyssey Marine Exploration is the creator of this exhibit. They are an underwater exploration company. They find, discover, and excavate underwater shipwreck sites. This exhibit is all about what happens when scientists find and study these archaeological sites that are under the water. So the whole process of having to find them using sonar, using the technology at hand, developing that technology themselves. And the technology is amazing because they never send divers down to pick up these tiny, delicate little objects. They send robotic equipment down. Guests can experience what it's like to control the device that brings objects up from the bottom of a shipwreck with the ROV simulators. Some of the objects recovered from shipwrecks are from encounters with pirates or even pirate ships themselves. So you'll learn a little bit about piracy and kind of the less glamorous side of what it's like to have been a pirate. One of our most popular items, which is our hurricane tubes. So guests can stand in these tubes and feel the force of a Category 1 hurricane. Hurricanes are one of the causes of shipwrecks. Shipwreck is our most artifact-rich traveling exhibit that we've had so far. There are over 500 individual artifacts in this exhibit, from mint condition, very rare coins, to actual silver and gold bars that were found in these shipwreck sites. So things as old as the 1622 Tortugas wreck up to the 1940s Gersapa wreck. Really, really stunning, amazing pieces that we get to see here in Las Vegas that people might not be able to see otherwise.
After many years of some really tough love and fun, our playground at the Springs Preserve is literally played out and ready for an extreme makeover by a design team of the youngest and best equipped stakeholders to reimagine this playful space.
We realized some time ago that we had some room for improvement with our playground. It's a small playground, there's not a lot of shade in the playground, and we still do get a lot of people that come here in the summertime when kids are out to use the playground at the Springs Preserve. So we had a unique opportunity, as we have done in the past, to partner with UNLV. So we got a hold of the architecture department, and we're working with the landscape design students to actually do a redesign of the playground. We brought in the best project experts that we could to design our new playground. And who better to design a playground than kids? So we recently had a workshop where 50 kids came in. They drew pictures, they made models. So these kids took Play-Doh, they took rocks, they took sticks, they took seed pods, they took markers, and they designed the most incredible play areas that you could ever imagine. They were very excited. Over and over, the words that they wrote down, and these are the two things that I know and I hope our playground will be, is fun and awesome. And I think the students from the architectural class got a lot out of their interactions with those kids that were designing the playground that I hope someday they'll get to come back and play on here.
Join us for a wacky Wild West puppet adventure. Learn how the citizens of Sustainability Gulch live in harmony with the environment and what you can do to do the same. For more information, visit our website at springspreserve.org. Whenever you enter the Springs Preserve, you're treading on environmentally enlightened ground. So many of the structures and features, outside, inside, underfoot, and overhead, are testaments to the sustainable surroundings.
The Springs Preserve is very proud of its sustainability initiatives. The most obvious initiatives here at the preserve are the buildings themselves. Now, the Springs Preserve did receive certification from the U.S. Green Building Council, a Platinum LEED certification, so leadership in energy and environmental design. And at the time, we were one of the most environmentally advanced complexes here in North America.
One of the most substantial of our green advances is in many of the very walls that surround you and that function as simple, sensible, highly effective earthworks.
Behind me, you may notice a structure or a part of a wall. That's what we call rammed earth construction. Now, generally speaking, rammed earth is the walls are thick enough so that over the course of one day, the heat from the sun doesn't have a chance to penetrate all the way through inside the building. And then at nighttime, when the sun is down, there's an opportunity for the heat to kind of ebb off the building, and you kind of start the day back over again.
The mixing and ramming of clean and recycled ingredients would be a perfect project for the kids to get their hands dirty if it wasn't done on such a massive and sophisticated scale.
Just a little bit of naturally occurring sediment, a teeny bit of Portland cement as a binding agent, leftover ash from a coal-fired power plant. And then we mix all that together with a little bit of water. We build a box about the size and width of the wall. We add in a layer of that and tamp it down. Add another layer and tamp it down, ramming it down, pushing it down. And in fact, if you look at the wall, you may be able to see various levels or lines in there.
Inside, the buildings are all about the innovative use of a plentiful but often wasted agricultural byproduct that is very sparing of cold or hot air.
For many of the buildings, we use straw bale insulation. It's tightly bound. In fact, it's so tight, it has an R factor of R56, meaning it's much, much better at keeping the heat out or the cool in, depending on the time of year.
With our abundance of sun, it's no wonder that solar power is such a key component of our sustainable energy profile.
The most obvious thing that people have seen when they come to the preserve are the solar panels in the parking lot. And you may not know this, but they in fact do move a little bit. They do track the sun.
Solar is also the driving force behind the lighting in the gardens and an award-winning house that is as beautiful as it is sustainable.
2 years ago, UNLV took second place internationally at the U.S. Department of Energy's Solar Decathlon competition, which was quite a coup for UNLV, and the home is permanently here at the Springs Preserve. And we are using the solar power to generate the power used for the home, as well as the heat for the hot water systems that are used in the home as well.
What we don't have enough of, except when there's suddenly too much of it, is water, and that's often the product of rain events, which is why we've designed into the buildings some unique and pleasing features for water harvesting.
We have something called the butterfly roof in front of one of the buildings. And what happens is when there is a rain event, water is funneled down to that V there, and then there are gutters on either side that direct the water into a very large cistern.
The whole closed system we've conceived is very beneficial, but also symbolic of every way we try to maximize sustainable opportunities in these surroundings.
The water then flows down into a landscaped area below, and then if it is a very large rain event, we have some raised drains which can then take that water from under the sidewalk there down into what is now a dry wash and can irrigate down towards the gardens as well. So we're trying to take advantage of the water and directing it to where we need it. So here we're trying to use it for the purposes that we want when we can.
In a city that's famous for hurtling toward the future as fast as it can, Roy Purcell's constant vision of what once was brings the bygone days of Southern Nevada to life through pictures that are the last word in past history.
Studied art in Utah State University, and then I got a master's in creative writing. And so I was both a writer and an artist.
Who found a rich canvas for both practices at this crossroads of the American frontier.
Everything that happened in the West came through Las Vegas, so it was an easy history to deal with, and there was a lot of material to work with. And I just liked the area. I liked the history of it, and that's what really, I guess, kept me here.
That and enlightened patrons of his distinctive art like Alan Karcher, whose father was one of Purcell's most devoted collectors.
My father used to trade insurance policies for art with Roy Purcell, so I got to meet him, I think probably early 60s, I would say, so I've known him for a long time.
Long enough to take up his father's cause and commission the expansive array of Purcell's historical works that are on display in the patio gallery.
I went to Roy and said, Roy, I would like to have the history of the Las Vegas Valley painted by you. So let's start out, because people don't realize we go back with Kit Carson and Johnson Fremont and all that.
Every era he depicts is a balance between a photorealistic treatment of the event that's literally etched as if from memory and a panorama of the scene as it might have been.
The centerpiece in all of these is an etching. That kind of grounds the piece. And then I printed the etching on a large piece of paper, and then I continued with pen and ink to continue the imagery out onto the paper. And then after I finished the pen and ink, then I used watercolor and then colored pencils. So it's a mixed media piece, and then writing the story itself on it.
And the donation of these paintings by Alan and Lisa Karcher brings Purcell's Southern Nevada saga full circle to a place it can rightly call its present and past inspiration.
That painting right there is the Springs Preserve. Before they had the Springs Preserve here, he was out here painting this before they even had this here.
And so I came here and made a study of the plants that were here, and the animals and the birds and everything before I got into all the history projects, because this was the center.
Newfangled marshmallows made of dextrose and corn syrup may be a thing of the past once you see Chef Cicely make her own recipe in the old-fashioned way with actual marshmallow root that comes out just as fluffy and so soothing too.
Howdy folks, my name is Chef Cicely and I'm joining you here from the Divine Cafe in the Springs Preserve in Las Vegas. So today we are going to be making marshmallows, but we're doing it the old school way, starting from actual marshmallow root. So this pile of what looks like sawdust is marshmallow root. It's where marshmallows as we know it today, their flavor profile, their sweetness, that's what it was born from. But we're going to start first with just making some delicious marshmallow root tea. That's a very easy thing to do. I've got some water, I've got a pot. Water goes in the pot, marshmallow root goes in the pot, and this I'm going to go ahead and just set on the stove top to boil to extract the marshmallow root flavor and also the chemical compounds. It's actually the original remedy for a sore throat. We have our gelatin. And now I have my marshmallow root tea here. What I'm going to do, very simply, is just take this gelatin and I'm going to sprinkle it over the top. So once it absorbs the water, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more. Let it continue on. And I'm going to let this sit for a little while. Over here I have one that's been done already. And you can see that the structure is much different. It's quite thick. There's one more part to our marshmallows, and that is the thing that's going to make it taste sweet. We've got honey. It's going to go into a pan, quite simply. And this I'm going to heat over medium to high heat for about 8 minutes. What I want it to do is heat to a temperature just below 240 degrees. So I can see that my honey is definitely now at a very happy boil. I need to continually stir it to make sure that it does not indeed boil over. So this is at the correct temperature. So just before, now that I've pulled it off the heat, but before I mix it into the gelatin, I do want to add a little bit of vanilla extract and then just a touch of salt so that the salt can dissolve into the liquid. And now I'm going to take this over and we're all ready to mix it into the gelatin. So what I already have over here that's new is a sheet pan with some parchment paper over it. It's been dusted lightly with some cornstarch or tapioca starch. I actually like to use tapioca starch. It has a little bit better flavor to me, but cornstarch, tapioca starch are the same. The reason for doing that is I'm going to have a very sticky confection and I want to be able to get it off of the pan. So what I'm going to do first is take my gelatin mixture and I'm going to put it in a nice deep mixing bowl. What I'm going to do next is I've got my mixer here. Just a hand mixer is what I'm going to use. You can use also just a stand mixer, such as a KitchenAid or anything like that. It goes on to medium-high whipping speed. So I'm going to start just gently mixing up my gelatin. And then I'm going to pour my hot honey and vanilla mixture down the side of the pan and mix it in stages. And the reason for doing that is so that I don't, again, break my gelatin. I don't want to heat the temperature up too fast. I want it to nicely denature. So I'm going to pour a little bit in. I'm going to keep on mixing. And I'm going to take a little bit more and pour it down the side of the bowl. And the reason it goes down the side of the bowl is because that also allows it to cool down a little bit more before it meets the gelatin. So I'm starting to get some of those nice, soft peaks in my marshmallow mixture. What that means is that it's starting to come together and hold up. Good strong whip toward the end. We can definitely see all those peaks. And we're done. So as fast as I can. Spread that out before it starts to form. And we can see the love just moving all the way across the whole entire dish. And I want to scoop that out into the pan just as fast as I can because it's going to start to set just as soon as I stop mixing it. As soon as the motion stops, it begins to set up and hold into the form of marshmallows. So this pan is done. Now what has to happen is it's going to sit out at room temperature, no cover on it, for at least about 4 hours. Here we have some done marshmallows. And this is where it gets really fun, particularly if you've got any little kids around or big little kids, because marshmallows tend to be particularly fun to play with. You can cut them into any size that you would like, and you'll see that what I did was lay out a piece of the parchment paper underneath this. And the reason for that, I could of course just as easily have done it right on the cutting board, but then I can actually use all that starch that I've got and shake it all up so that none of them stick to each other. And there you have it, folks. We have natural marshmallows from marshmallow tea from actual marshmallow root. Myself and all of the staff here at the Divine Cafe and at the Springs Preserve wish you a wonderful, happy holiday season. Thank you again, and we hope to see you here.
There's a lot more to discover, so join us next time here at the Springs Preserve, where the water-worshiping, desert-adapted, history-loving qualities of our Mojave home mingle to bring new life to Las Vegas.